Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we're taking a look at the NECA Halloween 2 Michael Myers and Dr. Loomis 2-pack. Despite this being kind of reissues of existing stuff, I was pretty excited about this. Obviously, we got Myers from Halloween 2 on his own. Previously, I thought I'd reviewed that figure, but I can't find the video, so I guess I didn't, or I maybe filmed it and then never published it. And then Dr. Loomis, a lot of pieces here look to be reused from the retro style figure. It's a little hard to tell certain bits, because things kind of get goofy looking when they make them in that retro style, so I don't know if the head sculpt is necessarily the same. But it looks like we get one of the same hands, we get the same guns, so I'm gonna guess that a lot of these parts are the same sculpt, just resized for this, and then a new body put into place. This is, of course, really exciting because this is the first time Loomis has been offered in this scale, particularly, since a much older 2-pack that NECA did back in the day, from Halloween 1, which included the Myers that they released as a separate figure, an exclusive Loomis to the set, as well as a little diorama piece of the front of the Myers house. And with Loomis being one of the more iconic characters from the franchise, I'm sure it wasn't just me that was really excited to get my hands on a new updated 7-inch scale figure of the character. So let's go through this. We'll look at the accessories for each figure, we'll look at the figures themselves, and everything else. First accessory is kind of a shared item, so we'll look at that on its own, and it is the, I believe, poster style jack-o'-lantern, I guess you'd call this. We've previously gotten the opening credits style jack-o'-lantern with the single release Myers. So this one, I believe, was also in the Loomis and Laurie 2-pack in the retro style. It looks to be the same sculpt, so we have the kind of yellowed skull there in the front, and then it just warps into the pumpkin there in the back. The cool part is, like, if you want it just as a pumpkin for set dressing, you can turn it around and it's just a pumpkin, and it's pretty nicely detailed. And I just realized I've been like painting all morning and my fingernails are covered in random bits of black and gray paint, so yeah, that sucks. But yeah, it's a decent looking little sculpt there. I think it works well. It's a nice added bonus accessory. Just to kind of compare, there's the one from the single release, both in its open and closed forms. So a completely different thing, but cool to have. And just for the hell of it, the other two jack-o'-lanterns I believe we've gotten in the Myers line. The one on the left is the pretty darn old one from the Evolution of Evil 2-pack. Might have been with that Loomis set as well. I don't remember if it came in that too. And then the one on the right is the newer 2018 Myers pumpkin. Loomis comes with two main accessories, which are his revolvers. Honestly, when I first looked at this, and even these are the same ones from that other pack as I mentioned before, and even in that set, I was kind of confused why there were two. I thought maybe there was one for Loomis and one for Laurie. But then when I saw this one was coming with two guns, I did a little more research, and there are minor differences between the two, but at this scale, it makes it really hard to identify what is a difference between the guns, and even what's there could potentially be, you know, manufacturing defect, so it makes it a little difficult to tell. I'm probably going to get this wrong because I swear every time I talk about anything firearms related on this channel, I screw something up. But the one on the left, I believe, is the gun that he has at the end of the original Halloween, the one where he shoots him 7 times in this movie out of a 6-shooter. And what I read said you could tell the difference by the grip, which they look pretty similar on both of these. And then the barrel has some additional kind of like differences in the cutaways on it. Once again, hard to see on this. The main difference I've really been able to identify, and I don't know the correct term for it, I want to call it the sight there at the end of the barrel, but that's probably not the right term. But you can see on this one, which I believe is the 78 one, it kind of comes up to a point. And on this other one, it is flattened out at the top. So that is the way I've been kind of telling them apart. There's other little differences, but it's very difficult to tell what's going on here. So, yep, 2 different guns, but very similar in look. But well painted, well executed, he holds them both well, so no real complaints there. Loomis does also come with an extra hand, and this is holding his lighter from the end of the movie. So it's a nicely detailed little hand there. There's a little bit of paint bleed coming over from the lighter onto his hand and vice versa, but it's a pretty tiny accessory with a very tiny little flame on there. Not a whole lot to talk about, but it looks pretty good. Myers gets the majority of the accessories here. So we have on the left the Elrod knife, the bread knife he steals from the Elrod house. We have his hammer. We have the little tiny syringe made of actual clear plastic, which is really cool with even the little lines on the side. And then we have his scalpel. All these are really nicely detailed. Obviously, the two there on the right are really tiny, so I do worry about either breaking them or losing them. The plus side is, once again, if you have that other Myers pack, I believe these are all the same accessories. So if you're buying this just for the Loomis, you're getting duplicates. So I guess if you do break it, you might have some extras. Michael also comes with a selection of hands, 3 for his left, 3 for his right. With Loomis, I knew which hand was the accessory hands, but I've been playing with this Myers a little bit, and I kind of forgot which hand he came with out of the box. So I just figured I'd show them all right now. So basically for his left hand, we have a relaxed hand, we have a gripping hand, which is a kind of looser grip, more for the knife or the hammer, and then we have a grasping hand with the kind of fingers outstretched. Then for his right, we have a gripping hand, once again loose for the hammer or for the knife. We have the scalpel hand, and we have a tighter grip hand, which is, I believe, for the syringe. I think you could also put the scalpel in it, but the other hand is more dedicated for that purpose. Also for Michael, we get an array of fire effects that are meant to reproduce the scene at the end of the movie where he's being burnt up. So this bigger piece goes on his torso. These two next larger pieces go on his thighs. This one goes on his face, and then the tiny one goes under his upper arm. So to attach this, I find it's easier to remove the head first. And also I think the alternate head is the one that holds the flame piece better. So I usually start with the bigger piece. It's designed to kind of curve around his neck and shoulders. The downside with that is that he does have a soft rubber collar on there. So you kind of have to get that, inside the fire to get it to sit the way you really want it to. Because it will sit on there without playing around with it too much, but it will sit off the shoulder. So to get it to like hug the shoulders, even on that side it's a little off, you kind of got to get it around this collar here. I kind of wish the flames were a little softer. It would make this a lot easier. I'm going to pop the alternate head on. We'll talk more about that a little later. But the face piece basically has little indentations in it that match up with his eyes. So then you'll have that bit kind of covering his face. These ones for the upper legs just kind of clip on either side. I guess you could interchange them, but to me it makes more sense the flames are going, up and back on him. And then this other little bit just kind of goes into the flat in his upper arm there. Kind of have to have his arm tucked in for it to stay. So there he is, fully flamed on here. I gotta say, I'm not the biggest fan of this gimmick. Like, it's fine. It's cool for what it is. But it's one of those things where I almost wish they wouldn't have bothered if they weren't gonna go all the way with it. In the movie, Myers is basically covered in flames from his feet to his head, minus like his hands, basically. I think those are the only things that aren't really on fire, which is funny because in the next movie they are burnt up. But I don't know, this looks more like it would be a Jean Grey Phoenix effect than it does look like an actual Michael Myers is burning to death effect. So I don't know. I'm not disappointed it was included, but I do wish they would have gone a little further with it. And honestly, I'll get into it a bit later, but I kind of wish Loomis came with a couple extra hands instead of the ones he has. So it kind of would have been nice maybe to sacrifice this to invest into doing a couple things to give Loomis a more normal appearance in certain ways you want to display him. On the plus side, the flame effects do fit on that original figure, so if you don't want to reenact the burning of Michael Myers, we could reenact the burning of Ben Tramer. Never forget. In terms of sculpt and paint, I think they did a really good job on Loomis for the most part. The head sculpt is fantastic. I remember when the retro style figure came out, all I could think was, I hope they don't waste this head sculpt on just a retro style figure. Because honestly, I probably said it already in this video, but I think when they do the retro style, something in that process, the way they make those figures, they come off a little like soft looking. So when it's down in this scale, the detail all gets a little sharper, and I think this looks really good. He's got that just angry scowl on his face. He's got the beard. He's got the balding head. You can see the veins popping out on the side of his head. You can even see the crow's feet at the side of his eyes, which looks great. Really nicely done. The plastic has a nice kind of look to it. I was realizing the other day, we haven't seen that translucent plastic that NECA was using on a lot of their like flesh tone figures. We haven't seen that in a little bit, and I don't think this is quite that, but it gets closer to that than we've had in a while, and it looks really nice. Going further down the figure, we have his suit jacket. So you have his white shirt, you can see the stitching on there, the black tie that tucks down under. I believe the tie is a separate piece, but it doesn't really seem to be too movable, and I don't want to risk prying at it too much. My biggest complaint about the suit jacket itself is that they added this kind of speckling effect to it, and I checked, I saw it on other figures on the shelf, and I just don't think it translates well to whatever they were trying to make it look look like. I don't know if it's supposed to be like ash from the hospital fire, or if it's just supposed to add detail to the suit or just add grime to the suit and it was too dark of a color. But I really could have done without those light spots all over it. I think it just kind of looks sloppy. We have more detail there on the back, nothing too crazy. And then of course the lower part of the jacket, you can see the button, one button buttoned, the other one unbuttoned. We have his two pockets there. Sleeve has good details, a lot of wrinkles and everything in it. You can see the buttons there on the side and a bit of his shirt poking out underneath. We talked about his alternate hand, but we didn't talk about his standard hands. So his standard right hand is just a gun holding hand, trigger finger hand, nicely detailed. But this left hand is pretty awkward. Like, it has this strange gripping pose, and to me it looks like you're supposed to stuff the gun in there, like he's handing it to Laurie or something. Like maybe something like that. But the fact that they haven't announced a Laurie figure for Halloween 2, and it just kind of seems like an awkward hand. I really would have rather have a relaxed hand or a fisted hand, probably a relaxed more than anything else, that you could swap out with the left just to give it that more kind of not whatever this is. I don't even know. I don't know what this hand's really supposed to translate to. This is my best guess, but I just want something a little more neutral. Bottom of the jacket and back, not much more detail. There is a bit of a gap where his shirt meets his pants there. He does have that kind of rubber diaper pants, and it looks like they tuck the shirt in to give him more articulation. So it's a little awkward in that section, but it's covered mostly by that jacket. And then further down, we got the pant legs. Nothing too crazy there. Nice and wrinkled at the bottom especially. Same kind of deal going on the back. And then some pretty nice detail there on the shoes. The laces are painted on, the stitching's all there, the soles painted differently. And then you can see the joint there. I assume is supposed to actually look like the sock or something because it's dark brown. This was a gripe I had on the Myers figures last time, was that it should have been a boot, but I think at least for Loomis it should probably be more like loafers or something, so this makes at least a little more sense. And then we do have peg holes there at the bottom. The other feature with Loomis is that his arms are removable, so kind of have to work it out of the socket a little bit. I'm going to do it off camera because I don't trust myself to do it while reaching around the camera. But there you go. That's what Loomis looks like with no arms. Then we have this rubber trench coat we could slide on over that. Then you could pop on the trench coat arms, and you have to swap over the hands from the other arms unless you want to switch over to the lighter hand. It's one of those things. It would have been nice and easy to give this pair of arms a separate pair of hands, but whatever. Trench coat is nicely detailed. You can see the buttons and the stitching, the popped collar. As I mentioned, it's all rubberized, so it's nice and pliable. Good wrinkles there on the back. Sleeves are nicely wrinkled and detailed with the seams. Little button on the cuff there. And you can also see his shirt popping out underneath it. I don't think they went as far as to detail in the suit jacket and a little bit of shirt sticking out, but really you wouldn't see enough for it to really matter. The pockets there up at the front of the coat, and then it ends just around knee level. Now, this is definitely the more iconic Loomis look, the one that I feel like you're going to get more use out of, but I really do like that they included the suited option. Just another way to display this figure. Honestly, if it wasn't stuck in a 2-pack, I would almost consider buying a second one just to have both on display, but I'm not going to buy a second 2-pack and have my 4th Halloween 2 Myers figure because for some reason I bought 2 of the single carded ones. We get 2 different head sculpts for Michael Myers. I'm torn on these. We'll bring in the other ones from the previous release for a comparison in a minute, but I think this gets a little closer to that Warlock stretch of the mask, but I don't think it nails it completely. It still looks a little dopey. Obviously, we have both the regular version and the Blood Tears version. They appear to be the exact same sculpt, just with a minor paint difference there. It does have a lot more dirt on the front of this than the previous one did, and I think the prominence of the flesh tone on the neck is toned down a little bit. If I add some annoying light on here, you can see the eyes are painted inside there. It seems like on all of them, I guess what you're seeing on the left side, that eye is more centered in the mask, and then on the right side, that eye is closer to the inside of the eye. Just kind of a weird little detail on both. I do also want to point out that I really dislike the little jump in the paint on the blood tears there on our right side. I went back and looked at the scene. He does smudge the blood coming out of his eye, and it does kind of like angle down slightly to the right, but I could not find any example of the blood actually going back up and then down again. You think if it's flowing blood tears, it should at least follow a continuous downward path, and this is just kind of defying gravity here a little bit. So I think if you kind of, just brought that line to the side and then down again, it would look fine. I may touch it up with repaints later or something. It's not a hard thing to do. Side profile looks pretty good. The mask looks pretty beat up and gross. The hair is okay. It looks a little flat to me. They did some of the kind of hair horns sticking off to the side side, but they're not too extreme. And then the dry brushing just is kind of weak looking on it. We do get the seam up at the back of the mask. You can see more of those spiky little hair bits going on there. And then on the side there, we do have a painted on but not sculpted in sewing needle scar. For a comparison on the outside here, I'll bring in the initial release head sculpts. Yeah, I don't think that first sculpt captured part 2 Myers at all, so this one's at least a little closer. I do like the hair on the initial release a little better. It is a little more crazy with the little tufts of hair sticking out. And just to see, here it is with the light on, you can see the eyes underneath as well. Moving down the figure, we do have a soft rubber collar up there at the top that's popped up. The big difference with this whole figure compared to the last one, I guess I could bring it in for that comparison, is the previous release was more of a blue color coverall, where this one is more of a green. I think the rest is the same. Something about this is making me feel like the one on the left is a little thinner, but I think it might just be an illusion. So I think it's basically the same figure as the initial release, or at least pretty darn close to it. And I guess I should have fixed Tramer's head on there because he looks really weird with having such a long neck. So they both kind of sit with the mask pretty close to the neckline. But the coveralls have a lot of good wrinkles in them. A lot of good stitching lines, the pockets there in the front. We do have the bullet holes in the front of the coveralls as well. I think I can count all 6, which is nice. If we turn them around, we got exit wounds sticking out the back. They did a decent job with the blood. It's not too shiny, but not also like too egregious. They stayed pretty well inside the lines, which kind of sometimes is all you could really ask for. As with before, more good wrinkles and everything going on back here. Sleeves are nicely detailed as well. And then we have the hands sticking out from the ends, which we already talked about. Because the coveralls are all kind of one piece, there is no like dividing line there mid-torso, so it's all just the entire upper body except for the arms and the head covered in a soft rubber bit. Legs go back to hard sculpted. I will say with mine, I think I do need to get like a bigger container and heat them up because I had to heat up his leg joints, his knee joints, but I found that his hip joints are a little stiff as well. And I think maybe something there is contributing to the fact that one of his hips is a lot higher than the other. So I do need to mess with that a little more and see if I can correct that. But right now he does kind of have an odd stance going on because of those hips. But the legs are nicely sculpted still, good wrinkles and everything all over them. Pockets and more detail there on the back. Same back here. And there you go on the front. And the boots are nicely detailed as well. They're kind of a grayish black. Got the silver eyelets on there. But once again, we do have a contrast between the color of the boot and the joint in there. And we know with Myers that the boot should come up. They shouldn't just be loafers, so you can't give it that excuse that we had with Loomis. So it does seem like they need to get back on doing this right. I remember the H40 figure, I believe, had this done correctly, or at least close enough. Granted, that figure did have dark black boots, where these ones aren't quite as dark. But even on the Halloween Kills figures, they used a blue joint in there, where they could have easily made it black and it would have looked a lot better. This is at least black. It's not too noticeable, but it is there. And then we do have some treads at the bottom of the boot, along with the copyright info, and then peg holes. For articulation, Loomis has a ball joint at the base of his neck, so he can look decently far up, a little bit down. You can tilt side to side as well as rotate. His arms will rotate a full 360. They'll go pretty darn close to his body and then out almost to the 90-degree point. We can hinge and rotate there at the elbow as well. Other arms will go just as far in and basically just as far out. No real difference there. We also get a good hinge there at the elbow. It is a single joint, but it bends past 90 degrees. We could also rotate there as well. And I didn't show the hands on the other arms, but they're basically all going to be the same. So you can rotate and then hinge up and down there. All the hands have the same hinge on them. I'm going to pop the arms back off again to show the torso articulation. There's a ball joint, I believe just one. It's hard to tell. I think it's just one at the waist here. But he can bend a little bit forward, a little bit back, hindered both by his coat and everything else. You can rotate side to side, and you can hinge a little bit side to side. The legs will kick forward. They'll go a little bit back. They'll rotate up at the top, but not a whole lot. You can hear how squeaky and clicky that is. It's not my favorite. Got a single jointed bend at the knee, and you can also rotate there. And the foot can hinge a little bit up and down. It's pretty limited. Let's see if the other one's any better. Nope, pretty limited. You can also rotate side to side at the foot, and you can pivot. For Michael, we have a ball joint at the neck, so up and down, side to side, tilt, all that good stuff. Not a lot of torso articulation because the coveralls are all one piece, so you are pretty limited there. It feels like there are joints in here, you just really can't get much out of them. Arms will do a full 360, they will go pretty far out to the side, not 90 degrees though, maybe we're looking at maybe 70 or something, but they will come in pretty close to the body. We have a double jointed elbow, which pulls in pretty tight. We also can rotate at that elbow joint. The hands are on that pseudo import style joint, so you can kind of pick your angle of hinge depending on how you kind of set it up. So you get a really good range of motion. It's a hard joint to describe. It's a little ball peg, so you can rotate it and then it hinges at whatever angle it's rotated to, if that makes any sense. That's nice. I do always worry about those joints being maybe a little more delicate, but I haven't really had any problems yet, so just going to hope that keeps being the case. The legs will kick decently far forward, not too far back. They will go out to the side. Mine are seized up at the upper thigh rotation. I know it's there. If I bring in the old one, that's the same body. You can see that joint's there. See, the knee is nice and tight on him, or maybe not so nice and tight. Bends about 45 degrees in, and you could also rotate. The feet will hinge down, up, they will rotate, and they will pivot. So both of these are kind of standard, normal person heighted figures. Myers being a little taller than Loomis, but you can see not nearly as tall as like Jason there on the right. And then just for the heck of it, because we have Loomis, I wanted to bring in the Evolution of Evil Michael Myers young version. Kind of hope we get an update of this. I really hope we get some official H1 figures at some point, or maybe they could stretch the Kills and Ends licenses to give us some of these, since we've kind of seen little bits of the original Myers and young Mikey in there. So hopefully they'll get it some way or another. So overall, I think this 2-pack is pretty decent. I really would have liked it if they would have given us a Loomis and Laurie 2-pack instead, just because this is pretty much a retread on that original Michael figure. However, I will say that unless you really want a Ben Tramer in your collection, I think if you were considering between getting the single package figure and the double pack, this is the set you want to get. The head sculpt is enough of an improvement that I think it really helps. The green coveralls, I believe, are the consensus of being accurate for part 2, so he has that going for him as well. And overall, I just really like this. There's obviously some nitpicks, like I said, about Loomis's other hand, and the flame effects not being the best, and some of the paint and joints being a little off. But you know what? Those are, like I said, nitpicks. They're not anything that ruins this pack. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to buy a Loomis figure again that's in this scale. I like that he comes in the trench coat. If he just came in the trench coat, I would have been pretty happy, but having the suit option is an awesome bonus for this. And I think this is a must-have for any Halloween collectors. So as of now, I don't think NECA has announced anything else in this line. I think we can pretty much assume we will be seeing a Halloween Ends figure sometime in October, unless that movie gets pushed back. But you know what? I feel like this pack, especially because a lot of it goes to recreate that final scene in Halloween 2. Feel like it's time to move on to Halloween 4, right? We get 2 different Myers from that. We can get like 3 different masks for the masked Myers, you know, depending on what size eye holes you want, or if you want that mess up mask that was blonde and flesh tone. And then you could have the bandaged up Myers. That would be kind of cool to have. They could give us another Loomis for it with the scarred up face. A Jamie Lloyd would be cool. And like I said, I'd love to go back to H1 and get some of those essential figures as well. And definitely Laurie Strode figures from both Part 1 and Part 2 would be fantastic. And they've already done the Part 2 one in that retro format, so they brought Loomis down to this scale, so I'm hoping they can bring Laurie down as well. Hopefully around San Diego Comic-Con time, we will find out some more. But that is a long, long wait from when I'm filming this, so we shall see. But that's it for this one. I will see you guys in the next video, and until then, happy Halloween.